Hello, I'm Nima Rajan. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says the federal government will fund provinces' efforts to test people for COVID-19, track the contacts of those who test positive, and help different jurisdictions share data. He says federal contact tracers are helping public health authorities in Ontario and are ready to make thousands more calls a day when any province asks. Canada normally has the capacity to test 60,000 people per day, but has been averaging only about 28,000. The Prime Minister says the government is still working to find out exactly what help the provinces need most. Statistics Canada reports retail sales posted their largest monthly drop on record in March and expects an even larger drop for April once the final numbers are tallied. The agency says retail sales fell 10% to $47.1 billion in March as non-essential businesses began to shut their doors due to the pandemic. Statistics Canada also says a preliminary estimate for April indicates a 15.6% drop for the month. Scientists across the country are now testing wastewater to see if it could be an accurate way to alert public health officials to a second wave of COVID-19. The Canadian Water Network is in the early stages of coordinating a pilot project in cities including Ottawa, Montreal, and Edmonton. The ultimate goal is to root out new outbreaks in certain neighborhoods or even specific buildings, like long-term care homes. Now, although some parts of British Columbia's society have reopened, Health Minister Adrian Dix says the province won't be lifting visitor restrictions at senior care homes. A significant portion of the 152 total COVID-19 related deaths in the province have been connected to long-term care or assisted living facilities. And Dix says measures that have been put in place to protect residents in care homes must continue. And if there are no COVID-19 bumps in the road, Saskatchewan residents will be allowed to chow down at their favorite restaurants and bars again starting June 8th. That's the day that the provincial government has set for Phase 3 of the Reopen Saskatchewan plan. Phase 3 calls for the restaurants and licensed establishments to be able to open at half capacity. Gyms and childcare facilities and places of worship will also get the all clear, subject to guidelines currently being finalized. Well, New Brunswick is the first of the 4 Atlantic provinces to crunch its numbers for a fiscal update, and the projected deficit is big. As revenues continue to slide due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the province is forecasting a $291 million deficit. Yesterday's update predicted revenue would be $291 million lower than budgeted, while expenses will be $100 million higher because of pandemic-related effects. Canada's ambassador to the United Nations is headed to New York City, where he will begin the final push to win a temporary seat on the UN Security Council. Marc-André Blanchard has been running the mission remotely since mid-March, but with less than a month to go before the vote, he is returning to New York. Canada, Norway, and Ireland are competing for 2 temporary seats. A peacekeeping expert believes Canada's chances could be hurt by what may be an all-time low in its contributions to peacekeeping missions. NATO ambassadors are meeting today following President Donald Trump's announcement that he plans to pull the U.S. out of the Open Skies Treaty. Canada is one of more than 30 countries signed onto the treaty, which allows short-notice observation flights. Trump is accusing Russia of violating the pact, which is an issue that NATO leaders expressed concerns about 2 years ago. Pakistan's Civil Aviation Authority says at least 2 people survived the crash of a Pakistan International Airlines plane in a neighborhood close to the airport in Karachi. There were 91 passengers and 7 crew members aboard the Airbus A320 flight from Lahore. A recording of the flight's final moments indicates that it was trying to land when one of its engines failed. Karachi's mayor says 5 or 6 houses were destroyed. China is doubling down on fighting the COVID-19 pandemic and creating jobs as the number of people thrown out of work soars worldwide. The country's premier says Beijing will give local governments 2 trillion yuan, which is about $280 billion US, to help compensate for shutdowns imposed to curb the spread of the virus. The promise followed news that nearly 39 million Americans had lost their jobs since the crisis spread globally. Officials say locusts, COVID-19, and deadly flooding pose a triple threat to millions of people across East Africa. The World Bank has announced a $500 million program for countries affected by the historic desert locust swarms. Some countries in East Africa haven't seen such an outbreak in 70 years. The added threat of COVID-19 imperils a region that already was home to about 20% of the world's population of food-insecure people. Myanmar intends to submit a report due Saturday outlining its claims of compliance with an order from the International Court of Justice to protect members of its Muslim Rohingya ethnic minority. The court agreed last year to consider a case alleging that Myanmar committed genocide against the group, which is an accusation vigorously denied by the government. The court order requires Myanmar to take all measures within its power to protect the Rohingya from genocide, to safeguard evidence relating to allegations of genocide, and to prevent public incitement to commit genocide. The commander of the Snowbirds says the captain killed in last Sunday's crash in Kamloops, BC, was kind, intelligent, and genuinely believed in the work that the flight team was doing. Lieutenant Colonel Mike French says Captain Jennifer Casey was an essential part of the Operation Inspiration Tour to lift Canadian spirits during the COVID-19 pandemic. Even though the accident was the 8th fatal crash of a Snowbirds plane over the team's 50-year history, French says it would be tragic if they were grounded. Well, that'll do it for today's news update. I'm Nima Rajan. Thank you for joining us today, and I'll see you next time.